think about the workplace, Lee, do you think about psychological safety? And do you even know what a high trust environment is? These are terms that I really wasn't all that familiar with.
What are you
I don't
saying
think
there,
any of my
Audrey?
employers have talked about it. Well, no, but seriously, these are two very important topics we're going to talk about today.
Absolutely.
And welcome to Manage Smarter, everyone. I'm Audrey Strong. I'm the Vice President of Communications here at Sales Fuel.
And I'm C. Lee Smith. I'm the CEO and founder of Sales Fuel.
That's right. And Teresa Mitrovic is our guest today. Boy, she's a heavy hitter when it comes to these two topics. She is the founder of the ORO Collective, also a consultant, coach, course creator, and author specializing in performance, psychological safety, and trust. In her past life as a corporate leader, when the increasing demands of senior leadership clashed with single parenthood, coaching as a leader was the solution. And with workloads reset, team cohesion and alignment game, performance improved and profit tripled. Well, that's pretty darn good. That worked out well, didn't it, Teresa? She has lived and worked internationally, delivering keynotes and workshops to clients large and small. Author of the book, The Currency of Connection, How Trust Transformed Life, Relationships, and Work. Live to our show all the way from Australia. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Audrey and Lee.
So Lee, go ahead. You wanted the first bite of the apple on this one.
No, so it's a three-parter actually. So psychological safety, what is it? How come I don't have it? How can I get it? That's probably the three things that people that are tuning in are thinking right now. Sure.
So let's start with the easy bit, which is what is psychological safety? So we know psychological safety as being the ability to speak up freely and express ourselves without the fear of being judged or of it causing any harm to ourselves or others. So it's that sense of being able to speak freely without judgment. I take it a step further, and well, actually, by going back to the basics, which is saying that we understand after the last few years what safety really means, right? We have this deeply visceral experience of what safety looks and feels like for each of us individually and collectively as teams and within organizations. Psychological simply means what's going on in our mind and emotionally. So if we think about those two words independently, so what's happening mentally and emotionally for us, what is our, what's happening in our mind, what does our emotional landscape look like, and how safe do we feel? That then starts to throw up a different way of looking at it, which I think is more helpful for going forward basically in the post-2020 world. I think taking it back to those basics and thinking, hey, what creates an environment of safety around us from a mental and emotional perspective, so that the energy that we would spend trying to keep ourselves safe, we are able to reinvest in connecting with others and doing the work, because we only have so much energy, right? And we're either investing it in protecting ourselves if we don't feel psychologically safe, or in connecting with others if we do. And so that's how I look at psychological safety. The next question you asked is, why don't you have it?
How do I get it?
Then how can I get it?
Why don't you have it? How do you get it, right? And look, let's be honest. A lot of us as managers and leaders, and certainly through my 18 years in corporate life, we're always trying to get it right. We're always trying to create this environment where our team members feel safe so that they can completely lean in and invest all their thought and energy into doing really great constructive work, not kind of protecting and self-preservation. The reason we struggle to get there is because despite our best efforts, we're all human. And if we're not feeling grounded and kind of really clear in our own thoughts and our own direction of travel, then it's really hard to create that for the team around us as well. And most of us as managers haven't had training in how to be a manager, let alone do it well in a way that actually inspires human performance. So what we're taught often around management and leadership, traditionally at least, has always been very operationally based, right? So it's always linear, it's always really clean. So, it's A to B and how you get there. And that's not how humans work. So the reason we don't have it is because no one's done a really great job of saying, actually, you guys are no longer working with machines, you're working with humans. They're organisms, not machines, and therefore they need a different approach. And what we're just realizing now, I think, from a much wider perspective, is if people don't feel psychologically safe, they don't feel able to trust each other in the work environment or to trust their leaders, and therefore they don't perform to their best effort. So if a leader wants a team to perform like humans, they want to create a human environment, they want everyone to be able to do their best, then creating this environment where people feel psychologically safe so that they can trust each other, then performance becomes quite natural. So it's not linear. It's simple, but it's not linear. It's quite complex because humans are complex.
We like things to be clean and buttoned up and everything like that. And the human psyche is messy.
Exactly. And look, I'll give you an example, right? So many of the leaders that I work with, and I know I was guilty of this as well, is we say, hey guys, it's really important that you tell us, that you share your views. As this is the idea that I've got, or these are the goals that we have. What are your thoughts around how we get there? And then someone will pipe up, some bold individual will go first and we'll go, oh no, that's ridiculous. We've tried that already. And what we do then is we commit those cardinal sin of building trust, which is we're immediately in that one sentence, we're telling people that we're not listening to them and their opinion doesn't matter. And so please don't say that again.
And we just shut them down.
We shut them down. And that sends a really strong message to the rest of the people around the table, right? So what I say to leaders is, if you hear something, once you've invited, and it's natural human instinct, right? We respond. What we need to do as leaders is listen with curiosity and listen to engage rather than listen to reload or listen to be right. So what I said to leaders is, one of the easiest things to do is to say, hey, thanks for going first. Tell me more about that. Or we've tried that before and it didn't work. Then I'm really curious about why, about what you think we could change this time around to make sure that does work. So draw people out. And the more that your team see you doing that, the safer they feel to speak up. And then you start to create this habit, right? So really what we're seeing at the moment is a need for leaders to be able to facilitate those environments and those conversations rather than having to lead them and be directive around them.
Those phrases you just used and the way you went at that and responding really neutralize the tension in the room. It's like taking out a little neutralization gun and going pew, and then well, so whatever, so that the
Are you
person
sure that's
who
how the
said
neutralization gun goes?
feels safe, and
where can we buy those, Audrey?
But one of the questions that, as I was reading, was, you talk about tensions among team members or tensions among leaders and their reports or managing up to the C-suite, that this is a neutralization technique of tensions. And that begs the question, everything you just said is, okay, how do I sustain this over a very long period of time when I have different people coming in and out? I have turnover, and I might have a negative Nelly. I might have somebody who's just negatively wired in general. How do you handle it in perpetuity?
That's such a good question, because that's real, right? That's what we're dealing with. So when I was working in London, and so the interesting thing is, when I was working in London, I used to work around high-performing teams. In New Zealand, the language changed to dysfunctional teams, and I think in the US you kind of get a hybrid of both. But what's interesting is you usually have one person in a team at least who's more outspoken, who is more I was going to say aggressive, but just kind of more vocal, assertive. Right? Like more assertive. Let's
said the assertive one. Yes.
Spectrum. Yeah. So it's important to know how to deal with that. And as a leader, you've got to recognize the difference between someone who is who has the competence and the desire, but not the motive, but isn't a great team member, or actually just wants to be right, because you can't always fix that, and that can actually be quite corrosive for a team. So you've got to be really careful about the people that you have working in a team environment together. People who want to be right are great in very isolated kind of sole operation roles, but in a team you need people to be able to listen to each other, to hear each other. Otherwise you cannot sustain that trust. So in terms of long term, there are two things that you need to be conscious of. One is that as a leader, you've got to be constantly watching and alert to signs that people are either psychologically safe or not, and you can do that by noticing how they are engaging, right? Okay, so we can't see, we can't see inside someone's. So the signs are, look for signs that people are either connecting or protecting. So that's how you can recognize psychological safety. Are they leaning in or are they pulling back? Are they speaking up? Are they withholding? What does their body language tell you? So you can tell by their body language what they're saying and what they're not saying, and also the language that they're using, right? Are they being curious or judgmental with their language? So you can see, so those are your signs of connection or protection. That tells you about psychological safety. How engaged people are tells you about the trust levels. So if people really care about the organization, they're leaning in, and they are trying. Even if they fail, they're trying. So they're trusting you to give them some advice if they step up in a meeting, or if they put together a presentation for you. They're putting their best foot forward. They're investing a degree of trust. And so as a leader, you've got to be conscious about how you respond to that. So the two parts are really, from a leadership perspective, you need to be facilitating this trust environment and acknowledging the stuff that's going right. So if someone speaks up, acknowledging that and saying, wow, that sounds like that was probably a really difficult thing to say, or it was difficult to go first, or I appreciate, if someone brings up something really difficult, saying it's really important, thanks for calling out the elephant in the room. Is anyone else feeling that way? And kind of neutralizing, but also putting everyone on getting people on the same page and letting people know that if someone else asks a question, there's usually someone else in the room that's got that question as well, and they're sitting on it because they don't feel safe to speak up, right? So you've got to encourage that team dynamic constantly. So every meeting is an opportunity, every team meeting, every team lunch, every team experience is an opportunity to continue to reinforce and facilitate that kind of communication within the team. And as a leader, it's about paying attention to that facilitation from the team, but also to your individual who is really extroverted or really can't help. And look, I do this as well. I'm so extroverted, but I'm doing it now, right? I talk and talk and talk, and you guys are sitting there patiently, quietly, very politely listening. But you've got to be really careful that someone's energy doesn't overwhelm the room and prevent other people from speaking up. So you can do that in the team by saying things like, I love that you always go first, Teresa. You've always got so much energy. Hold that for a moment, and let's see what some of the other people on the team think as well. And then we'll all we'll wrap this up and see where we agree and where we disagree and what this looks like going forward. But you can kind of call people out gently like that and say, yeah, I know Teresa speaks a lot and she's got a lot of energy, and that's useful in some respects. And it's useful when we need to get energy into the team. But when we need lots of voices, we need to be able to dial that down a little bit to let the other voices come through. When you do have a really difficult team member, it's important to take them aside and just check on their psychological safety. So that's when psychological safety becomes more of a focus for a leader. If you see someone who's behaving in a really aggressive or assertive or protective way consistently, have a side conversation with them and just check in on how they're doing, what's going on for them, and where you might be able to help them to find greater safety or security, or what you can do to help make their work life a little bit easier so that they can re-inhabit that space of being a high-functioning team member.
Along those lines, how does a manager or a leader deal with somebody who just can't trust other people? Maybe it's the way they're wired. Maybe it's something that's happened in their past or some sort of trauma that they're carrying around. But it's nonetheless, though, it's you got somebody on the team then that either doesn't trust you, doesn't trust other people. How do you develop that psychological safety, with somebody like that?
So it's funny when I'm saying it's funny. It's not a funny subject, right? Because it's a really serious subject, and we often, we don't have the luxury of working with people who always trust us. So we do have to sometimes work inordinately hard to build that. The short answer is think of it like the work equivalent of dating. Let it build slowly. And how you build it is there are four different, the way I talk to people about building trust is there are four different components. There is who you are at the level of capability and who you are at the level of character. So character is about connection and credibility. So do you actually care about other people? So if you ask their opinion, are you actually asking because you want to hear it, or are you asking so that you can prove how right you are? And credibility is, can people rely on you? Do they know that if you say something, you're going to follow through? And any of us who've been to a workshop, to a retreat where we've had an incredible team workshop, and everyone feels like they've done great work, they've really expressed themselves, they've co-created something, and they go back to the office and nothing changes, that's a hit against credibility for the leader, right? So that's on the character side. That's how we telegraph to our team who we are as a leader, our character. The competence side is around, or the capability side is around your competence and your consistency. So what do your leadership strengths look like, and how consistently are you showing up with those? Or are you a bit of a Jekyll and a Hyde? Are you when you're great, you're really good, and when you're bad, you're a bit of a tyrant as a leader or as a business partner? So understanding that those are four different ways that you work towards building trust, and thinking about if I was Lee, if you and I were working together and you didn't trust me, I'd be thinking about how I'm demonstrating all of those 4 components in my relationship with you. So how am I showing up as the most capable person or competent person within the scope of our relationship, or what you're expecting from me? How can I demonstrate to you my competence? How can I be really consistent in how I'm showing up with you? How can I demonstrate credibility by always doing what I say I'm going to do? And how do I show you that I care? That I care about your opinion, that I care about you as a human being, that we're here to co-create. You're not here to do my bidding. And here's the thing, and I'm really glad that you asked the question, Lee, because psych safety, the reason I talk to leaders about focusing on trust, like recognizing the signs of psychological safety, but thinking about building trust, is because you can try and create an environment that allows people to feel psychologically safer, but psych safety is a construct of our entire life history up until that point, plus what's going on for us on that day. So my background, like I have some really intimate experience with deep sort of traumatic stuff, right? So I'm no stranger to adversity and trauma. And so I know that the way that I show up and the way that I trust people and how long it takes me to trust people is different than what it might be if I'd grown up in a really safe household, in a real, had a really safe marriage the first time around. Those kinds of things. Those experiences do impact us, right? And so some people are naturally hardwired to protect themselves more from the outside world because their experience has conditioned them to believe that they're not safe. And most really they can't do anything to repair that or mitigate that for an individual, because that's beyond the scope of any leadership's remit, right? What the leader can do is create a safe working environment for that person to be in, where they are seen and acknowledged and valued for the work that they do.
And it seems that this points to retention because, of course, you're happier, you're happy in the workplace, you're feeling more productive and all that. One of the things that Lee and I were interested in was this question that you have here about performance reviews being a distraction, not being helpful after you've created, a high trust environment. You want to talk about why that doesn't work? It's
sure.
New model.
So the old model of doing performance reviews and performance management performance management is by exception, and performance reviews are usually biannual or annual. In any other sphere of life, if something wasn't working, we wouldn't wait 6 months or 12 months to tell them about it, right? We would tell them when it happens. If you think about as a parent, when we raise kids, I don't know if you guys are parents, but when you raise a kid, if they've got their feet up on the sofa and you don't want them to do that, you don't wait 3 months to tell them to get their feet off the sofa. You say to them, hey, and you don't say get your feet off the sofa. You say, can you put your feet on the floor? You ask for what you want, right?
No, we sketch out a little note and we put it in their file and we bring it up.
Try to remember how we felt about that. We stew about it. So the best thing to do is to think about it. So rather than thinking I'm managing the performance and I've got these windows every 6 to 12 months where I can talk to them about it, talk to your team about performance constantly. So the new model is simply this. Do pay attention to your one-to-ones, do set up team meetings and make those your conversations about performance. Take a performance partnership leadership approach with your team where you say to them, my job as a leader is to set the North Star, tell you what the boundaries are or the constraints to us being able to achieve that, and then to create the path and give you guys the support, the access and the development that you need to be as successful as you can to meet or exceed those goals. So the new way is little and often, not a lot, but very infrequently.
Seems more efficient to me.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? The other thing it does, Audrey, is it neutralizes the room again, because if you're annoyed about something, you get to have a conversation about it, right? So to Lee's point earlier, you're not kind of sitting on things and like things never have a chance to build up because you're addressing them at a time when they matter.
My last question for you is this: like, when you have trust, but that trust is broken somehow, unintentionally, of course. It's like, can you ever get it back?
You can if the other person is open to that, and you can't if they're not. So there are different levels of breaches of trust, right? If you've breached trust in a way that really undermines someone's value system or what they stand for, then you're going to have a really hard time. But if the other person is willing, then yes, it goes back to those 4 components of trust building. And the first thing that you do is you own up to what's happened, and you say, and you own your role in the breakdown, and you state your intent to improve it and to do the work that's required to improve it. Because it's about the thing about trust is we have to see it to believe it, right? Hearing it isn't enough. We need to see it to believe it, because our brains and our emotions are smarter than just being shown something or being given gifts. We need to see it actually. It needs to be a norm in our relationship dynamic before we believe that it's true.
I've always said that trust is a very precious thing, and you don't realize how precious and valuable it is until it's gone. And
right.
I, like you, have personal experience with some of that, and it's like, wow, when
it wasn't me, by the way, just for the record, it wasn't me.
No, about my first husband, my first marriage. So there, I said it too. There you go.
When you,
so all right,
just get it out there. But it's true, right? So often the thing for, I think, for all of us as human beings is that our lives revolve around relationships, and no one's ever really done a great job of explaining to us how to build trust in these relationships to make our lives easier. So we carry around all this this doubt, this strain, this extra weight, because we're not making sure that we've got high trust relationships. So I think, like you, Audrey, when you don't have trust, you feel it. Oh yeah, you really feel it, sure. And it's absent. So we just need to get better at showing people how to build it and make it a consistent, make it a cultural norm and make it a relationship norm.
Well, your website is orocollective.space. And then I'll put all your social media in the show notes, including a link to the orocollective.space/manage smarter for our listeners. And you have kind of a thing that you want to offer to folks. So go ahead and explain that to me.
Sure. So I put together some discounts on a couple of the products that we have. So we've talked a little bit about partnering for performance in this conversation. What I've got in there is a guide around partnering for performance, and it's a complete walkthrough. So you get all the tools, you get me kind of walking you through how they all work and how you can use them to start to create rapid change in the team. And then there's also a 30-day team reset, which is it's the impatient person's guide to how to create a high-performing, high-trust environment in your team in 30 days. So both of those things are listed there with a special discount for listeners if they want to see how this works in practice.
Fantastic. Teresa, thank you so much. This has been very interesting.
Thank you for having me, Audrey and Lee. It's been wonderful to work with you both this morning.
Great to have you.